The U.S. Navy and Marines are annoying China. The U.S. Philippines step up multinational exercises in the South China Sea. The Philippines and China had a couple of incidents near the Second Thomas Shoals in the Spratly Islands, which is a disputed region between the two countries. These two recent incidents between the two nations included the Chinese Coast Guard twice ramming Filipino ships. The dispute is a smaller part of a larger issue of China illegally claiming most of the South China Sea as its own. The Chinese claiming of the South China Sea has created disputes with Taiwan, the Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia, and Vietnam, in addition to other territorial disputes with Japan. The Philippines has a defense treaty with the U.S., so the ramming incident has the Philippines calling upon the U.S. Navy to increase activity in the region to China's detriment. Outside of the incidents of the Second Thomas Shoal, the U.S. does not recognize Chinese claims in the South China Sea. China, for its part, claims that the area is territorial waters and states no country is allowed to transit the South China Sea without its permission. As a result, the U.S. Navy has been performing what is called freedom of navigation exercises in the South China Sea. The U.S., without permission of any of the countries that have claims in the area, but China is the primary target, sails ships close to the areas that are in dispute. This week, the U.S. destroyer USS Hopper conducted a freedom of navigation exercise, which China responded with air and naval tracking in attempts to warn the U.S. destroyer away from the region, which the U.S. Navy ignored. The Chinese military responded stating that the U.S. was the, quote, security risk creator in the South China Sea and violated its territory, but China saved most of its protests for the Philippines. China accused the Philippines of enlisting, quote, foreign forces, end quote, into its dispute with China, but Chinese statement intentionally ignores that the U.S. and the Philippines have a long-standing defense agreement. The Filipino government cited that the defense agreement after its ships were rammed by the Chinese Coast Guard, and this resulted in the Philippines to step up multinational defense exercises with its neighbors and its defense partner, the U.S. These exercises will continue to the annoyance of China. In October, the U.S. Navy and the Filipino Navy held the latest version of an exercise called Sama-Sama over 14 days. The exercise was the biggest yet held and had other naval assets participate from Australia, Japan, Canada, France, Malaysia, United Kingdom to join the U.S. and the Philippines. The purpose of the exercises was to increase cooperation and interoperability between the partner navies with the purpose of conducting wide-ranging naval activities to keep the sea lanes open in parts of the South China Sea. Exercise Sama-Sama was followed up by another exercise in November called Kamandang 7, which is predominantly a marine exercise including Marines from the U.S., Philippines, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom, and it lasted 11 days. The purpose of the mission was to improve interoperability of the various nations with the purpose of countering any crisis in the, quote, Indo-Pacific, end quote, region in both the South China Sea and the East China Sea. The exercise was initially envisioned as a U.S.-Filipino exercise, but as tensions have escalated, the breadth of the exercise was increased. The exercise covered strategic parts of the region and at one point took place within 120 miles of Taiwan. The final exercise does not include the U.S., but is between the Philippines and Australia, and it's a 3-day exercise in November to conduct sea patrols in the West Philippine Sea, and it's the first of its type. The exercise will include both air and naval assets of the two countries. These exercises are getting bigger in scope and are expanding and are signs that the Philippines is getting more assertive in its claims against China. The aggressive actions to illegally claim most of the South China Sea and its invasion threats against Taiwan is forming a coalition of states impacted that is coalescing into a significant obstacle for China. China's stance has rallied countries that are impacted by Chinese claims and by countries that China has antagonized who are traditional naval powers who support the traditional role of navies to maintain sea lanes for open trade. This includes the U.S., Japan, United Kingdom, France, and Australia playing that traditional naval role, and export-reliant South Korea to keep its trade routes open. In addition to a powerful Indian Navy to the south and Indian Ocean, the Chinese had inadvertently created a naval coalition that will act more aggressively and will stretch China's naval capacity to effectively challenge this coalition without risking an international war in the Pacific or seriously damaging its export-reliant economy. China will need to soften its stance if it hopes to avoid an arms race and promote an international alliance against it.